Yes, the J.W. Williams Funeral Directors have been proudly serving the people of this community since 1918. Service is our motto. The poor, the rich, the middle class and all are given the best of care and attention at all times. You have the privilege to select what you want. In your time of need, contact the capable, the competent, and the dependable staff of the J.W. Williams Funeral Home who is genuinely concerned with your care. At J.W. Williams Funeral Home, you are aptly served by the proprietor president, Deacon Arthur L. Parker, who continues the traditions and values set forth by the past president, Dr. Napoleon Williams. Your announcers for the J.W. Williams Funeral Home Sunday morning program are Deacon Arthur L. Parker, Reverend Isaac H. Owens, Mrs. Calandra Wilkerson Parker, Minister Frankie Harmon, Ms. Sandra Johnson, and Deacon Earl Clark, Jr.
Thank you, and good morning, friends. We come to you this morning to bring announcements, dedications, and songs. We certainly hope that your day may be brighter after listening to our program. The family of Mr. Johnny Mike Smith, Sr. of Vienna, Georgia. The family of Deacon David Lee Chambliss, Sr. of Cordele, Georgia. The family of Evangelist Estella Smith Roberts of Atlanta, Georgia and Cordele, Georgia. Would like to thank their many friends for the food, the flowers, the condolences, and all other expressions of sympathy and kindness shown to them during their hours of sorrow and bereavement during the past week. Mr. Johnny Mike Smith, Sr., age 73, of 1939 Coney Road, Vienna, Georgia, died Wednesday, November 1st, at his residence in Vienna, Georgia. The funeral service for Mr. Johnny Mike Smith, Sr., age 73, was held Wednesday, November 8th, in the chapel of the J.W. Williams Funeral Home in Cordele, Georgia. The Reverend Willie E. Green, pastor of the Forest Chapel Baptist Church of Pinehurst, Georgia, officiated. The burial followed at the Vienna City Cemetery in Vienna, Georgia. Survivors include his loving and devoted wife, Mrs. Willie Mae Carter Smith of Vienna, Georgia. His loving and devoted children, Ms. Anna Marie Smith of Cordele, Georgia, Mr. Barrett Smith of Vienna, Georgia, Deacon Johnny Mike Smith, Jr., and his wife, Mrs. Carly Smith of Cordele, Georgia, Mr. Michael Carter and his wife, Mrs. Kim Carter of Macon, Georgia. 19 beloved grandchildren, 4 great-grandchildren, his loving, devoted sisters, Mrs. Patricia Smith and her husband, Sir Cleveland Smith, and Miss Burnell Hosley, both of Orlando, Florida. His beloved brothers, Mr. Willie Charles Smith of St. Petersburg, Florida, and Deacon Carl Reuben Smith and his wife, Evangelist Annie Smith of Vienna, Georgia. A beloved aunt, Mrs. Christine Pounds of Cordele, Georgia. His beloved mother-in-law, Mrs. Annie B. Carter of Vienna, Georgia. his brothers-in-law, Mr. Marvin Carter, Mr. Bobby Carter, and Mr. Stevie Carter, all of Vienna, Georgia. His sister-in-law is Lily Carter of Vienna, Georgia. A host of beloved nieces, nephews, many cousins, other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends survive Mr. Johnny Mike Smith Sr., age 73, of 1939 Coney Road, Vienna, Georgia. Deacon David Lee Chambliss Sr., age 90, of 1806 South 10th Street, Cordele, Georgia, died Friday, November 3rd, at the home of his beloved daughter, Miss Sharon Chambliss, in Cordele, Georgia. The funeral service for Deacon David Lee Chambliss Sr., age 90, was held Saturday, November 11th, in the sanctuary of his beloved New Oak Grove Baptist Church in Cordele, Georgia. The pastor, Reverend W.W. Wilson, delivered the eulogy. The Reverend Dion Jones officiated. The burial followed at the Bethel Cemetery in Cordele, Georgia. Survivors include his loving and devoted children, Mr. Willie Ray Carter and his wife, Mrs. Candy Carter of Columbus, Ohio, Mr. Robert Lee Hicks of Valdosta, Georgia, Mr. David Lee Chambliss Jr. of Cordele, Georgia, Mr. Willie Frank Chambliss of Savannah, Georgia, Mr. James Edward Chambliss and his wife, Mrs. Kathy Chambliss, Miss Sharon D. Chambliss, Mr. Moranto Jordan, and Miss Cheryl Jordan, all of Cordele, Georgia, and Mr. Michael Jordan of Gulfport, Mississippi. 16 beloved grandchildren, 27 great-grandchildren, a host of great-great-grandchildren, his beloved sisters, Mrs. Daisy Bell Austin and Miss Ola Mae Chambliss, both of Vero Beach, Florida, and Miss Mamie Lee Carner and her husband, Mr. Noah Carner of Cocoa Beach, Florida. 4 beloved sisters-in-law, a host of devoted nieces, nephews, cousins, other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends include his beloved New Oak Grove Baptist Church family, survived Deacon David Lee Chambliss Sr., age 90, of 1806 South 10th Street, Cordele, Georgia. Evangelist Estella Smith Roberts, age 73, of 2404 Jonesboro Road, Northwest Atlanta, Georgia, formerly of Cordele, Georgia, died Friday, November 3rd at Amicus Hospice in Decatur, Georgia. The funeral service for Evangelist Estella Smith Roberts, age 73, was held Saturday, November 11th, in the chapel of the J.W. Williams Funeral Home in Cordele, Georgia. Her pastor, Elder Allen Smith, pastor of the Greater Atlanta Healing Temple Church, officiated. The burial followed at the Bethel Cemetery in Cordele, Georgia. Survivors include her loving and devoted husband of 48 years, Elder Jesse Roberts of Atlanta, Georgia, her beloved brothers and sisters, Mr. Charlie Smith of Ellenwood, Georgia, Deaconess Osi Outlaw of Cordele, Georgia, Mrs. Gladys Booty and her husband, Mr. Rufus Booty of Atlanta, Georgia, and Mr. Calvin Smith of Cordele, Georgia. Her beloved mother-in-law, Mrs. Ruby Wilkes of Atlanta, Georgia. Her sister-in-law, Mrs. Theresa Smith of Atlanta, Georgia. A host of beloved nieces, nephews, cousins, other relatives, and many sorrowing friends, to include the members of the Greater Atlanta Healing Temple Church, survived Evangelist Estella Smith Roberts, age 73, of 2404 Jonesburg, Georgia, Northwest Atlanta, Georgia, formerly of Cordele, Georgia. Again, the family of Mr. Johnny Mike Smith Sr. of Vienna, Georgia, the family of Deacon David Lee Chambliss Sr. of Cordele, Georgia, the family of Evangelist Estella Smith Roberts of Cordele, Georgia, and Atlanta, Georgia, would like to thank their many friends for all of the many kindnesses shown to them during their hours of sorrow and bereavement during the past week. May God bless each of you is their prayer. The J.W. Williams Funeral Directors serving Cordele and Vienna were in charge of each of these arrangements during the past week. And now, it is certainly with the deepest regret that we make the following announcements. United States Army veteran, Mr. James Andrew Graham, age 74, of Montgomery, Alabama, formerly of Wilcox County, Georgia, died Saturday, November 4th at the UAB Hospital in Birmingham, Alabama. Survivors include his loving and devoted wife, Mrs. Ruby Williams Graham of Montgomery, Alabama, his caring and devoted son, Mr. Eric Graham of Albany, Georgia, and Mr. Greg Graham of Birmingham, Alabama. 3 beloved grandsons, Eric, Jaquan, and Dash, his loving sister, Ms. Robin Dykes, and her husband, Mr. Charlie Dykes of Abbeville, Georgia, his beloved brother, Mr. Cornelius Graham, and his wife, Mrs. Saul Graham of Ackworth, Georgia, a host of nieces, nephews, cousins, other relatives, and many sorrowing friends survived. United States Army veteran, Mr. James Andrew Graham, age 74, of Montgomery, Alabama. The public viewing and visitation for United States Army veteran, Mr. James Andrew Graham, age 74, will be held today, Sunday, November 12th, from 12 until 2 p.m. at the chapel of the J.W. Williams Funeral Home. The graveside service for Mr. James Andrew Graham, age 74, will be held Monday, November 13th, at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time at the Alabama National Cemetery in Fort Mitchell, Alabama. Mr. Charles Hardiman Jr. of 2103 Turner Street, Cordele, Georgia, died Wednesday, November 8th in Atlanta, Georgia, of injuries sustained in an automobile accident. Survivors include his loving and devoted children, Mr. Travis Hardiman and his wife, Mrs. Jessica Hardiman of California, Mr. Jamil Hardiman of Virginia, Mr. Samar Holloman, and Mr. Ramon Poole, all of Pittsburgh, Virginia. 4 beloved grandchildren, his loving and devoted father, Deacon Charles Hardeman Sr. of Cordele, Georgia. His loving and caring sisters, Minister Evelyn Ross and her husband, Mr. Ronald Ross of Macon, Georgia. Mrs. Ruby Ross and her husband, Mr. Charlie Ross, and Miss Deshelle Davis, both of Cordele, Georgia, and Miss Laquita Johnson and her husband, Mr. Aubrey Johnson of Warner Robins, Georgia. His beloved brothers, the Reverend Reginald Hardeman and his wife, Mrs. Annie Hardeman, Mr. Adrian Hardeman and his wife, Mrs. Aisha Hardeman, Mr. Craig Hardeman and his wife, Mrs. Tamika Hardeman, and Mr. Dwayne Hardeman and his wife, Mrs. Mika Hardeman, all of Cordele, Georgia, and Mr. Greg Hardeman of Macon, Georgia. His beloved aunts and uncles, Mrs. Earlene Hardeman and Mrs. Elaine Hunter, both of Macon, Georgia, Mr. William Hardeman and Mr. William Dixon, both of Cordele, Georgia, and Mr. Eugene Anderson of Newark, New Jersey, a host of beloved nieces, nephews, cousins, other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends survive. Mr. Charles Hardeman Jr. of 2103 Turner Street, Cordele, Georgia. The funeral service for Mr. Charles Hardeman Jr. will be held Saturday, November 18th at 10 a.m. in the chapel of the J.W. Williams Funeral Home in Cordele, Georgia. The Reverend Isaac H. Owens, pastor of the Mount Calvary Baptist Church, will officiate. The burial will follow at the Westview Cemetery in Cordele, Georgia. The public visitation will be Friday, November 17th from 1 until 5 p.m. at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home. United States Army veteran, past Chairman Deacon John Edward Hancock Jr., age 90, of 204 Peachtree Street, Warwick, Georgia, died Friday, November 10th at the Chris Regional Hospital in Cordele, Georgia. Survivors include his loving and devoted wife, Mother Ola Mae Munson Hancock of Warwick, Georgia. His loving and devoted children, Mr. Donald E. Hancock and his wife, Mrs. Gloria Hancock of Warner Robins, Georgia. Mr. John E. Hancock III of Warwick, Georgia. And Miss Kathy D. Hancock of Cordele, Georgia. 4 beloved grandchildren, Mr. Dante Hancock of Atlanta, Georgia. Miss Taisha Hancock of St. Joseph, Michigan. Mr. Wesley Hancock of Perry, Georgia, and Mr. Jamal Tarbert of Cordele, Georgia. 1 great-grandchild, a host of nieces, nephews, cousins, and friends to include Miss Shirley Childs, Mrs. Eula Boatwright, Miss Geraldine Terrell, and Mr. Willie and Mrs. Bunny Morris, survived United States Army veteran, past Chairman Deacon John Edward Hancock Jr., age 90, of 204 Peachtree Street, Warwick, Georgia. The funeral service for United States Army veteran, past Chairman Deacon John Edward Hancock Jr., age 90, will be held Saturday, November 18th at 2 p.m. in the sanctuary of his beloved Fort Early Baptist Church in Warwick, Georgia. The pastor, Reverend Eshawn Edward, will officiate. The Reverend Donnie R. Hall Sr. will deliver the eulogy. The burial with military honors will follow in the Churchyard Cemetery. The public visitation will be Friday, November 17, from 1 until 5 p.m. at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home. United States Army veteran, Mr. Christopher Deshawn Alexander, age 28, of 7036 Stone Ridge Circle, Columbus, Georgia, died Thursday, November 9th at the St. Francis Hospital in Columbus, Georgia. Survivors include his loving and devoted parents, Mr. Curly James Alexander Sr. and Mrs. Vicki Lynn Alexander of Columbus, Georgia. His loving sister, Miss Adriana Murray of Elizabethtown, Kentucky. Miss Brittany Alexander of Perrysburg, Ohio. And Miss Ashley Alexander of Columbus, Georgia. A beloved brother, Mr. Curly James Alexander Jr. of Columbus, Georgia. His caring and beloved grandparents, Mr. William Brown and Mrs. Ruby Ann Bleacher, both of Rochelle, Georgia. Mr. Emmett Alexander and his wife, Mrs. Linda Ann Alexander of Tifton, Georgia. And Miss Rudine Alexander of Fitzgerald, Georgia. His loving aunts and uncles, Miss Tracy Hodge of Tallahassee, Florida, Miss Pamela Brown of Rochelle, Georgia, Miss Cynthia Alexander and Miss Latasha Alexander, both of Fitzgerald, Georgia, Miss Shalinda Alexander and Miss Belinda Alexander and Mr. Curtis Alexander, all of Tifton, Georgia, Mr. Dion Slay of Texas, one sister-in-law, one brother-in-law, a host of beloved nieces, nephews, cousins, other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends survive. United States Army veteran, Mr. Christopher Deshawn Alexander, age 28, of 7036 Stone Ridge Circle, Columbus, Georgia. The funeral service for United States Army veteran, Mr. Christopher Deshawn Alexander, age 28, will be announced at a later date pending the completion of the arrangements. Mr. Johnny Lewis, age 80, of 2106 South 7th Street, Cordele, Georgia, died Saturday, November 11th at Navison Health in Macon, Georgia. Survivors include his loving and devoted wife, Mrs. Geraldine West Lewis of Cordele, Georgia, his loving and devoted children, Mr. Christopher Bernard Finn and Miss Bernicia Lewis, both of Cordele, Georgia. 19 beloved grandchildren, 19 great-grandchildren, his beloved sibling, Mrs. Christine Hoggerbrook, and her husband, the Reverend Joseph Hoggerbrook, Mr. David Walker, Mrs. Addie Shield, Mr. Willie Walker, and Mr. Michael Walker, a host of beloved nieces, nephews, cousins, other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends survive. Mr. Johnny Lewis, age 80, of 2106 South 7th Street, Cordele, Georgia. The funeral service for Mr. Johnny Lewis, age 80, will be announced at a later date, pending the completion of the arrangements. The J.W. Williams Funeral Directors, serving Cordele and Vienna, are in charge of each of these arrangements during this week. Friends, that conclude our funeral notices for this morning. And as always, we do remind you concerning our pre-funeral arrangements planning available at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home, with packages available with a single pay, a 3-year pay, a 5-year pay, and a 10-year pay. So please stop by and talk with us concerning your pre-funeral arrangements needs available at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home. And also whole life insurance is available at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home.
Lord, help us to remember the sacrifice of every man and woman in our armed forces, for their service meant a commitment to our country and to us. Help us to remember that their service likely meant sacrifice, time spent away from loved ones, eyes that cannot unsee war, and memories that do not seem to fade. Lord, may we not know the hardships they have endured, but you do. You see all, you know all, and with you, all things are possible. Let our hearts be stirred by the selflessness of our veterans. Let their sacrifice motivate us to serve one another as they have served us. Father, help us to remember the sacrifice of their families. Freedom is not free, and the weight of our veteran services fell too on their families. Help us to remember our current service members and their active role in defending our nation. Heavenly Father, we ask for your provision for them and your protection over them. We pray that you would use this season in the military to bring them closer to you, for we know that you use all things for good and your glory. Lord, we pray that you would open our eyes to see the needs of our veterans in our communities. Open our mouths to uplift our veterans with honor and kindness. Open our hands in generosity to serve and care for them. Let us not be too busy or too distracted to honor their sacrifices. We ask all these blessings. In your name we pray. Amen. This prayer of peace is prayed by the CEO, President, and staff of the J.W. Williams Funeral Home in honor of veterans everywhere as we celebrate Veterans Day this weekend and all year round. And now for our announcements. The New Oakland Baptist Church Women's Day will be observed today, Sunday, November 12th at 10 o'clock a.m. Elder Sheila Mathis of Perry, Georgia will be the guest speaker. Everyone has a cordial invitation to attend. Deacon Alonzo Jones, Chairman of Deacons. Reverend W.W. Wilson is the pastor. Cornerstone Ministries Church of God by Faith Unity Community Feast will be Saturday, November 18th at 11 a.m. Free food provided to the community. On Sunday, November 19th, they will have Family and Friends Day, and the service will begin at 11 o'clock a.m. Elder James Patterson, pastor. The Mount Zion First African Baptist Church Annual Women's Day program will be Sunday, November 19th at 11:15 a.m. Minister Lucille Smith of Albany, Georgia will be the guest speaker. Everyone has a cordial invitation to attend. Deacon Joe Wedges, Chairman of Deacons. Dr. Dan James III is the pastor. The Bethel CME Church anniversary will be Sunday, November 26th at 11 o'clock a.m. The pastor, Reverend Veronica Smith, will deliver the message. At 3 o'clock p.m., Reverend Willie Earl Lockett, pastor of Greater Pines Chapel Baptist Church, will deliver the anniversary message. Everyone is cordially invited to attend. Reverend Veronica Smith is the pastor. The Concerned Citizens That Care are collecting items to help feed needy families in our community during the holiday season. If you would like to contribute to this worthy cause by making a donation or by donating items for food boxes, please contact Brother Johnny Dennis at 229-322-8163 or Mrs. Barbara Dennis at 229-322-8162. All donations will be highly appreciated. All members and those interested in becoming members are reminded of the Cordial Christ Branch NAACP meeting that will be held this afternoon at 4 o'clock p.m. at Blackshear Event Center. Very important information will be discussed, and we encourage each of you to come and be a part of this meeting. The meeting will begin at 4 o'clock p.m. Mrs. Kathy McGill, Branch Secretary, Reverend Isaac H. Owens, Branch President. The Greater New Lebanon Baptist Church annual Men and Women's Day program will be held today, Sunday, November 12th at 11 o'clock a.m. The Bethlehem Baptist Church and Reverend DeJuan Griggs will be in charge of the program. Deacon Calvin Mansfield, Chairman, Reverend Glenn Bryant Sr. is the pastor. The Jerusalem Baptist Church annual Men and Women's Day will be held today, Sunday, November 12th. Sunday school at 10 o'clock a.m., morning worship at 11 a.m. Reverend Johnny Holsey will be the guest speaker. Dr. Deanne Holsey is the pastor. The Lebanon Baptist Church 103rd Ushers Anniversary will be Sunday, November 26th at 11 o'clock a.m. Deacon J.C. Bryant will speak about ushers. The pastor, Reverend Christopher O'Brien, will deliver the message. Brother J.C. Bryant Jr., President. Deacon Eric Bryant, Chairman of Deacons. Reverend Christopher O'Brien, pastor. Freedom Harvest Worship Center of Leslie will celebrate the 13th pastor anniversary on Sunday, December 3rd at 2:30 p.m. at the McAfee Grove Baptist Church, and Dr. Robert Morgan will be in charge of the service. Dr. Georgia Deriso, pastor. The McAfee Grove Baptist Church invites everyone to worship with them during their family nights, Tuesday at 7 p.m., small class study Thursday at 7 p.m., Sunday morning worship service at 9 a.m. Minister Tawandi Daniels, Secretary, Dr. Robert L. Morgan Sr. is the pastor. The Friendship Baptist Church of Vienna, Georgia, will celebrate this pastor's anniversary today, beginning at 11 o'clock a.m. The pastor will deliver the message. At 2 o'clock p.m., the William Grove Baptist Church and Reverend Nikita Lester will be the special guest. Dinner will be served. Sister Inez Johnson, Secretary. Reverend Joseph Atkins is the pastor. The New Poplar Spring Baptist Church will be giving away a variety of greens on Saturday, November 18th at 10 o'clock a.m. at the Old Church Shopping Center on 16th Avenue. Pastor Johnny Dean, pastor, teacher. The Shady Grove CME Church Family and Friends Day will be observed on Sunday, November 19th. Sunday school at 10 o'clock a.m., worship service at 11, and the pastor, Reverend Andrew Thomas, will deliver the message. Dinner will be served. Brother Peyton Beal Jr., Chairman of Stewards. Reverend Andrew Thomas is the pastor. The Spring Hill Baptist Church of Tippettville will celebrate the 18th anniversary of its pastor, Reverend Choice Cobb Sr., on Sunday, November 19th at 11 o'clock a.m. The Friendship Baptist Church of Findlay and Reverend Joseph Atkins will be in charge of the service. Dinner will be served. Sister Mary Ann Lewis, Secretary. Deacon Calvin Youngblood, Chairman of Deacons. Reverend Choice Cobb Sr. is the pastor. Everyone has a cordial invitation to worship at the Greater Mars Tabernacle Baptist Church today. Sunday school at 9 o'clock a.m., worship service at 9:30 a.m. You may join them Tuesday midday prayer conference at 12 o'clock noon, Thursday prayer meeting and Bible study at 6 o'clock p.m. The call-in number for the conference call is 229-329-7611. Mother Mary Henderson, Church Mother. Deacon Arthur L. Parker, Chairman of Deacons. Dr. K.M. Williams is the pastor. The Gethsemane Baptist Church extends a cordial invitation for everyone to worship with them today during its worship service, which begins at 10:30 a.m. You're also reminded that the Gethsemane Baptist Church will have its annual Thanksgiving dinner free to the public on Saturday, November the 18th, and they invite you to come, and those who would like to have a dinner to come by and get the dinner from them. Deacon Johnny Wilson, Chairman of Deacons. Brother Cecil Straughter is the pastor. The Beautiful Zion Baptist Church invites everyone to worship with them today during this worship service, which begins at 11 o'clock a.m. Mother Grace Patrick, Church Mother. Reverend Lorinda Ray is the pastor. You're cordially invited to worship at the Greater Gum Creek Baptist Church each first, second, third, and fourth Sunday. Sunday services begin at 10:30 a.m. Mother Norma Solomon, Church Mother, Deacon Lonnie Hagerbrook, Chairman of Deacons, Reverend Joseph Hagerbrook is the pastor. You're cordially invited to worship at the Mount Calvary Baptist Church today. Sunday school begins at 9:45 a.m., morning worship at 10:30 a.m. Everyone has a cordial invitation to attend. Mother Evelyn Lewis, Church Mother, Deacon Leon Spears, Chairman of Deacons, Reverend Isaac H. Owens is the pastor. And as always at this time, friend, we'd like to remind you that those that would like to join us, you may watch us each Sunday morning beginning at 7 o'clock a.m. on the J.W. Williams Funeral Home YouTube channel. The program comes live at 7 o'clock a.m. on the J.W. Williams Funeral Home YouTube channel. That will conclude our announcements for this morning.
And now for dedication. Our first selection this morning is dedicated to the following: in loving memory of Mr. Lorenzo Davis, who departed this life November 5th, 2012, and would have celebrated a birthday November 19th. Dedication requested by his children and Mrs. Mary Frances Davis and the entire family. Gone but not forgotten. In loving memory of Mrs. Othenta Davis, who departed this life November 5th, 2020, dedication requested by her beloved children and Miss Mary Frances Davis and the entire Davis family. Precious memory lingers still. In loving memory of First Lady Annie Louise Ford Ray, who departed this life November 7th, 2021, dedication requested by our beloved husband, the Reverend Lorinda Ray, her children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, and the entire Ray family. Gone but not forgotten. In loving memory of Miss Daphne Armstrong, who would have celebrated her birthday November 9th, dedication requested by the Armstrong family. Precious memory lingers still. In loving memory of Mrs. Burnett Williams Simmons, who departed this life November 10th, 2015. Dedication requested by the Simmons and Williams family. Gone but not forgotten. In loving memory of Mr. Willie Jr. Davis, who would have celebrated his birthday November 11th. Dedication requested by his children and the entire family. Gone but not forgotten. In loving memory of Miss Frederica Renee Lewis, who departed this life November 11th, 2013. Dedication requested by her twin brother, Mr. Frederick Lewis, and the entire family. Precious memory lingers still. In loving memory of Mrs. Darnell Armstrong, who departed this life November 14, 1971. Dedication requested by the entire Armstrong family. Gone but not forgotten. In loving memory of Miss Mary Catherine Applin, also known as Jelly, who departed this life November 15, 2012. Dedication requested by our beloved son, Mr. Frederick Lewis, and the entire Applin and Lewis family. Gone but not forgotten. Our first selection this morning is dedicated to the followers and on a very special wedding anniversary. Happy 31st anniversary to the Reverend Isaac H. Owens and Minister Kathleen Owens, who will celebrate their anniversary Tuesday, November 14. Dedication requested by their children, grandchildren, and the entire family and the staff of the J.W. Williams Funeral Home. Happy 31st anniversary to the Reverend Isaac H. Owen and Minister Kathleen Owen, who will celebrate their anniversary Tuesday, November 14. Dedication requested by their children, grandchildren, and the entire family and the staff of the J.W. Williams Funeral Home. I see he so kindly put up a picture of me at my birthday, but he's not putting up a picture of me and his wife's wedding anniversary. But anyway, happy anniversary to the Reverend Isaac H. Owen and Minister Kathleen Owens there. Our first selection this morning is dedicated to the following: Happy birthday to Mr. Malcolm Christopher, who celebrated his birthday Sunday, November 5th. Dedication requested by his beloved mother, Miss Betty Epps, the Lawton and Epps family. Happy 6th birthday to little Nova Harris of Tifton, Georgia, who celebrated birthday Friday, November 10th. Dedication requested by the entire family and the housekeeping department of Chris Regional Nursing and Rehab Center. Happy birthday to Miss Akaya Armstrong, who celebrated her birthday Saturday, November 11th. Dedication requested by her beloved family. Happy birthday to Mrs. Rose McKenzie, better known to all of us as Pumpkin, who celebrated her birthday Saturday, November 11th. Dedication requested by the entire family. Special birthday wish goes out to Miss Rosa McKenzie, better known as Pumpkin. Happy birthday and many, many more. Happy birthday to Mr. McQueese Palmer, who celebrated his birthday Saturday, November 11th. Dedication requested by his beloved family. And special birthday wish goes out to our beloved Miss Dorothy King, better known as Dot, who celebrated her birthday Saturday, November 11th. Dedication comes from her mother, Mrs. Dorothy Fish King, the entire family, and the staff of the J.W. Williams Funeral Home. Happy birthday, Ms. Dot, and many, many more. Our first selection this morning, special birthday wishes goes out to Mrs. Carol Montfrey, educator of the Chris County School System, from her husband, Deacon Jimmy Charles Montfrey, who celebrated her birthday during this past week. Happy birthday, Sister Carol Montfrey, and many, many more. Our first selection this morning is dedicated to the following: Deacon James Smith and family, Deacon Henry King of the Gethsemane Missionary Baptist Church Mother Mary Butler and family, Mr. AJ and Ms. Mother Vera Rivers and family, Deacon and Mrs. Willie Colson Jr. and family, Deacon and Mrs. Greg Frederick and family, Mr. and Mrs. Leroy Bass and family, Mr. and Mrs. Walter Gaines and family, Miss Christine Gaines and family, Miss Willie Mae Craft and family, Deacon Willie Smith and family, Deacon Curtis Lucas and family, Deacon Joed Clark and family, Chairman Deacon Oscar Cook of the Friendship Baptist Church of DeSoto, Georgia, and the members of the Friendship Baptist Church of DeSoto, Georgia, the Mercer family, the Mitchell family, the Fuller family, Miss Dessa Fuller and family, Miss Christine Anderson and family, Vienna, Georgia, Deacon George Jordan and family, Deacon Jerome Jordan and family, Commissioner Vesta Shepherd and family, and the entire Shepherd and Beal family, Miss Mary Beal and family, Mrs. Catherine Bivens Bailey and family, and the entire Bivens and Bailey family. Our first selection this morning goes out to Mr. Freddie Peterson and family, Mrs. Thelma Sis Johnson and family, Mrs. Gladys Sis Porter and family, Deaconess Martha A. Cross and family, Mr. and Mrs. Richard Cross and family, Deacon and Mrs. Johnny Perry and family, Vienna, Georgia, Mother Mary Benjamin and family, Mother Caldon Wallace and family, Mr. Manley Johnson and family, Miss Ethel Perry and family, and the entire Perry family, Deacon and Mrs. Frank Mays and family, the Mount Abel Baptist Church of Lee County, Georgia, Mr. and Mrs. Albert Mitchell and family, Mr. and Mrs. Robert Hawkins and family, Mother Melan Hawkins and family, Mr. and Mrs. Freddie Pittman and family, Mother Mary Henderson and family, Chairman Deacon Roger Westbrook and family, Mother Leela Honey Smith and family, Deacon Eddie Byram and family, Deacon and Mrs. Willie Shivers and family, Mr. Earl Passmore and family, Mr. Larry Passmore and family, Mr. Louis Harriel Sr. and family, Mrs. Yvette Zanders and family, Mr. Alvin Jones and family, Miss Rosa Rice and family, Deacon and Mrs. Grandy Ridley and family, Mr. Henry Wheeler and family, Mr. Ricky Smith and family, Miss Daphne Askew and family, Mrs. Minnie L. Passmore and family, Miss W. J. Billingsley and family of Unadilla, Georgia, Miss Stephanie Westbrook and family, Mrs. Cheryl Royal and family, Mr. Willie James Young and family, Mrs. Shirley Washington and family, Mr. and Mrs. Michael D. Bruce and family, Mrs. Mary J. Osley and family, Mr. and Mrs. Carl Westbury and family, Mrs. Charlotte Leonard and family, Mr. and Mrs. Franklin Jordan and family, the Reverend and Mrs. Arthur Jordan and family, Mrs. Dorothy Nadine Young and family, Miss Rosa Leggett and family, Mrs. Donna Lester and family, Miss Jackie Wheeler and family, Mr. Kelvin Whitfield and family, Mr. Alton K. Brown and family, Mrs. Rhonda Lester and family, Mr. Calvin Ford and family, Miss Christine Kinchin and family, Mrs. Annette Lear and family, Mr. Ira Robinson and family, Mr. Steve Jackson III and family, Mr. and Mrs. Olin Askew and family, Miss Cynthia Rush and family, Miss Dorothy West and family, Mr. Reginald Billingsley and family, Deaconess Connie James and family, Mrs. Aletha Askew, church clerk and trustee of the New Oak Grove Baptist Church, the Reverend and Mrs. Dion Jones and family, Miss Cynthia Webb and family, Miss Nettie Barnum and family, Mrs. Luane Harriel and family, Mr. Bert Kinchin and family, Mr. and Mrs. Alvin Lester and family, Mr. Robert Ford and family, Deacon and Mrs. James Askew and family, Mrs. Alice Henry and family, Mr. and Mrs. Donnie Brown and family, Mr. Tony Stubbs and family, Mrs. Anita Whitfield and family, the Reverend and Mrs. Donnie Hall and family, Mrs. Cornelia Brown and family, Mr. Harold Bryant and family, Mrs. Dorothy Lucas, retired educator and family, Mrs. Darcy Owens and family, Mrs. Arnell Holmes and family, Mrs. Athenia Perry and family, Mr. and Mrs. Clarence White and family, Mrs. Barbara Lane and family, Mrs. Charlie Mae Peacock and family, Mr. and Mrs. Bobby Anderson and family, Ms. Nettie Mae Wise and family, Mrs. Alton Jordan and family, Mr. and Mrs. Scotty Grant and family, the Cleve Cross family of Dooley County, Mr. Clayton Dykes and family, the Charlotte Cheney family, the Clayton family, Mrs. Carrie Whelan family, Mrs. Lucille Brandt and family, Mr. Michael Sanders and family, Miss Lily Brown and family, Mr. and Mrs. Eddie James Walker and family of Byronville, Georgia, the family of the late Deacon Army Lester, Byronville, Georgia, Mr. Burt, the Burke family, the Reverend and Mrs. Lewis Burden and family, Deacon and Mrs. Albert King Sr. and family, Deacon James and Dr. Elizabeth Maddox and family, Miss Hazel Clark and family, Mrs. Harry Ward and family, Mrs. Ruthie Daniels and family, Mrs. Viola Green and family, Deacon William and Mrs. Robbie Durham and family of Albany and Cordele, Georgia, Mrs. Pearline Browntree and family, Mrs. Sarah Coleman and family, Mrs. James Wise and family, retired educator, Miss Margaret Jordan and family of Dooley County, Georgia, Deacon Walter Brown and family of Vienna, Georgia, Mr. and Mrs. Winston Keaton and family, Mr. and Mrs. Arthur Morrell and family, Mrs. Martha Harris and family, Miss Mary Morrell and family, the Lester family, Mrs. Sally Morrell and the entire Morrell family, Mr. James Byram and family, the Whitfield family, Mr. and Mrs. Joe Clark and family of Vienna, Georgia, Chairman Deacon John David Law of the Evergreen Baptist Church of Pinehurst, Georgia, Mrs. S.M.A. Davis and family, Mrs. Odessa Sheffield and family, Mrs. Benita Armstrong and family, Mr. Edgar Lee and family, Mr. Deacon and Mrs. Willie Fields and family, Deacon Raymond Anderson and family, Mr. and Mrs. Willie B. Barnes and family. Our first selection this morning goes out to my neighbor, Mother Theron Jones and family, the entire Jones and Talbot family, Deacon John Stubbs and family, Deacon and Mrs. Donald Talbot and family, and Mrs. Juanita Mathis Talbot and family. Our first selection for this morning. Regret that we make the following announcement. United States Army veteran, Mr. James Andrew Graham, age 74, Montgomery, Alabama, formerly of Abbeville, Georgia, died Saturday, November 4th at the UAB Hospital in Birmingham, Alabama. The public visitation and viewing for United States Army veteran, Mr. James Andrew Graham, age 74, will be held today's Sunday, November 12th, from 12 until 2 p.m. at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home. The graveside service for United States Army veteran Mr. James Andrew Graham, age 74, will be Monday, November 13th at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time at the Alabama National Cemetery in Fort Mitchell, Alabama. Mr. Charles Hardiman Jr. of 2103 Turner Street, Cordele, Georgia, died Wednesday, November 8th in Atlanta, Georgia, of injuries sustained in an automobile accident. The funeral service for Mr. Charles Hardiman Jr. will be held Saturday, November 18th at 10 a.m. in the chapel of the J.W. Williams Funeral Home in Cordele, Georgia. The Reverend Isaac H. Owens, pastor of the Mount Calvary Baptist Church, will officiate. The burial will follow at the Westview Cemetery in Cordele, Georgia. The public visitation will be Friday, November 17th from 1 until 5 p.m. at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home. United States Army veteran, past Chairman Deacon John Edward Hancock Jr., age 90, of 204 Peachtree Street, Warwick, Georgia, died Friday, November 10th at the Chris Regional Hospital in Cordele, Georgia. The funeral service for United States Army veteran, past Chairman Deacon John Edward Hancock Jr., age 90, will be held Saturday, November 18th at 2 p.m. in the sanctuary of his beloved Fort Early Baptist Church in Warwick, Georgia. The pastor, Reverend Eshawn Edward, will officiate. The Reverend Donnell Hall Sr. will deliver the eulogy. The burial with military honors will follow in the Churchyard Cemetery. The public visitation will be Friday, November 17th from 1 until 5 p.m. at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home. United States Army veteran, Mr. Christopher Deshawn Alexander, age 28, of 7036 Stone Ridge Circle, Columbus, Georgia, died Thursday, November 4th at St. Francis Hospital in Columbus, Georgia. The funeral service for United States Army veteran, Mr. Christopher Deshawn Alexander, age 28, will be announced at a later date, pending the completion of the arrangements. Mr. Johnny Lewis, age 80, of 2106 South 7th Street, Cordele, Georgia, died Saturday, November 11th at Navison Health in Macon, Georgia. The funeral service for Mr. Johnny Lewis, age 80, will be announced at a later date, pending the completion of the arrangements. The J.W. Williams Funeral Directors serving Cordele and Vienna are in charge of each of these arrangements during this week. Our next and final selection for this morning is dedicated to the bereaved families whose loved ones were laid to rest during the past week. The family of Mr. Johnny Mike Smith Sr. of Vienna, Georgia. The family of Deacon David Lee Chambliss Sr. of Cordele, Georgia. The family of Evangelist Estella Smith Roberts of Cordele and Atlanta, Georgia. This selection is dedicated to the bereaved families whose loved ones will be laid to rest during this week. The family of United States Army veteran, Mr. James A. Graham of Montgomery, Alabama, and Abbeville, Georgia. The family of Mr. Charles Hardeman Jr. of Cordele, Georgia. The family of United States Army veteran, past Chairman Deacon John E. Hancock Jr., age 90, of Warwick, Georgia. The family of United States Army veteran, Mr. Christopher D. Alexander of Columbus, Georgia. And the family of Mr. Johnny Lewis of Cordele, Georgia. This selection is dedicated to all of the sick and shut-in, to all patients in the local and surrounding hospitals, nursing homes, and rehabilitation centers, to our beloved ministers and their devoted family members, to all retired educators, to the men and women serving in our armed forces, both stateside and abroad, to all veterans, and to everyone who listens to our program on each Sunday morning. It's a pleasure for us to bring it to you. Our program goes out in memory of our past president, Dr. Napoleon Williams, to my wife, Mrs. Calandra Wilkerson Parker, to my son, Jai Wilkerson Parker. The selection goes out to my mother-in-law, Mrs. Billy Ann Hall, and family, to my brother, retired Chief Master Sergeant Norman F. Dexter, his wife, Dr. Gwendolyn Maxine Dexter, and their grandson, Noble. The selection goes out to my sister, Mrs. Patsy Jackson, and her husband, Mr. Jim Jackson, of Cordele, Georgia. Goes out to my nephew, Deacon Kenneth Smith, program chairman of the Greater Morris Tabernacle Missionary Baptist Church, our pastor, and his wife, Dr. K.M. Williams, and family. This selection goes out to our beloved Miss Issa Mae Sanders and to Mr. Cleveland R. Lemon, the oldest staff member of the J.W. Williams Funeral Home and steward of the Bethel CME Church here in the city of Cordele, Georgia. This election goes out to our dear friend and brother longstanding, the Reverend Johnny Dean, pastor of the New Poplar Springs Baptist Church of Byronville, Georgia, and all of the members there. Goes out to our friend and brother, Deacon Jimmy Charles Mumphrey. Again, he wishes his wife, Mrs. Carol Mumphrey, happy birthday. Goes out to...
Yes, I'm going to walk all that will keep my way. Oh, child.
Thank you for joining us this morning. We hope you've enjoyed our program. Tune in again on next Sunday morning. In your time of need, contact the competent, capable, and dependable staff at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home.
Some of these days, when